Speaking of relevant, this is relevant because
this is probably going to be our main topic because
yeah.
you last night he was, you were messaging me like, well, where's this put hashkafa? And I'm like,
so we're gonna
I'm like, dude,
yeah.
All right.
No, meaning not a shkafa, but I'll explain to you.
Let's play the clip. Let's see what
Yeah. So this is Joe Rogan. This is Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp.
Yeah.
Talking to Joe Rogan about UFOs.
So before you go, like some people might not know who this guy. So Jeremy Corbell, he's like, I guess now he would call himself an investigative journalist and a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
He made some documentaries. Pretty good filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, people, this is the official narrative. People from the government, military people, are contacting him with leaks, information, with footage of UFOs and documents and whistleblowers and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he is sitting with his mentor, a journalist, a reporter named George Knapp, who's famous in Vegas.
Yeah,
he's from Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a News 8, like they have a Channel 8 news. Like I think it's CBS, or NBC. I'm not sure what broadcasting company.
Mm-hmm.
He's well known.
Yeah.
He has some like normal like journalism stuff. Like he exposed like mafia, extortion and real stories. And then he got sucked into this UFO thing when he was told about Bob Lazar.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one who made Bob Lazar. He exposed the Bob Lazar story. And that's how George Knapp really became big and famous. So and he's been in that topic since that time, 30 plus years. And so that's who these two people are.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's play this clip.
It was officially acknowledged that we're not alone, or do you think people would just start going crazy for more answers? Because I think that's the fear of people. They can't just say one thing.
Let me skip to the part they talk about.
And first time I sit down with them,
I think people would have to have actual physical encounters with UFOs before it really made sense to them.
Let's open the frozenness. What's going on over here?
Yeah.
1 second.
So basically, Joe Rogan, they're talking about all these whistleblowers. Yeah.
They're undescribable, and they rocket off into insane speeds, and smaller crafts come out of the mothership. And if that kind of shit happens, that would get real weird. That would get real weird real quick, and that could lead to chaos. That could absolutely lead to chaos. And if we somehow or another had proof that, maybe we are some sort of a science project or some product of genetic engineering, or maybe the human farm thing is real, that they literally...
I'm going to let this play because it's like a 5-minute clip.
Created us to try to get us to do things here, or to try to recreate souls, which is like a very bizarre thought.
Can you
that the soul is a thing that...
Bring it back just so people like, because
I mean, they pretty much heard it.
There was like an interruption. Like
I think people would have to have actual physical encounters with UFOs before it really made sense to them.
Slow. Hold on. Hold on a second. I don't know what's going on. Hold on. Let me close all the other apps here. 1 second. I don't know why it's so slow.
It was officially,
or maybe the human farm thing is real, that they literally created us to try to get us to do things here, or to try to recreate souls, which is like a very bizarre thought. That the soul is a thing that we carry around, and that there's some sort of value to having so many souls.
That's like, this is old school. This is my gateway drug into UFOs, was John Lear. And first time I sit down with him, he's like got this big cigar and he's looking at me and he's like, we're all property. We're property. I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about? And he was talking about how the aliens saw us as kind of like a wine, and our bodies are containers, and our souls are being matured as like a commodity, for these. Like he was a wild dude. Like I'm not saying I believe any of this. I'm just saying he gave me that idea day
When
one.
he said matured, like, is a soul of an intelligent person more valuable than the soul of a dummy?
I wish we could ask John Lear, but he's dead.
You know what I'm saying? What does that mean in terms of like aging our souls, maturing our souls?
Maybe through experience, like hardship experience, love, joy. Like maybe
Wow.
I'm just talking crazy right now, but this is I can do the John Lear. John would say every experience you have in life is what makes your soul mature, from your joy and your love to your hate and your anger. Live without envy, hate, or greed. That's my John Lear.
Wow.
Yeah, he was
Well,
a
it
wild.
makes sense if your soul is ultimately a representation of who you are and how you stand in life. It would make sense that would be fortified by your life experiences, and it would make it stronger, like everything else. Like your life experiences make you wiser. Wouldn't If the soul's a real thing, the more value you put into the world, the better you behave, the nicer you are, the more you learn to be honest and truthful, all the different things that we hold up as high qualities for human beings. It would make sense that would like enrich your soul.
And just getting better in life, right? Like if for you 20 years ago and you today, we all hope that we look at our past self and we say we've learned something.
Sure.
We become a better person, become more loving, empathetic, better and more creative at presenting ourselves into the world and making a difference. So that's a cool way to look at life. That was his cosmology.
That's it's a fascinating idea, but what's terrifying is that if we're a commodity, then we're like beef cows that are eating all the grass that we want because it's valuable for them to get fat. That the chaos on this planet is actually engineered to ensure more rich souls.
You guys should talk about that.
Yeah,
he likes.
I know some people that have been pretty far up the food chain that believe that there is mass manipulation of human affairs on a global scale for reasons that we can't understand.
And mass manipulation by humans or non-humans?
Non-humans, manipulating humans by non-humans to do things that they want us to do. There are some
what
theories,
kind of things specifically?
War, for example.
Really?
There's what's it called? The Gods of Eden. A guy named William Bramley, an attorney, sets out to write a book about the causes of war. And everywhere he goes throughout human history, he finds evidence of some kind of a exterior manipulation of human affairs, that they somehow benefit from us killing each other on a massive scale. William Bramley, Gods of Eden.
And what is the speculation? Like, what could it be that they would how would they benefit? Does he say?
Maybe it's souls, maybe releasing souls so that they can recycle them. I don't know. It's been 25 years since I read that book, but it's worth a read. I look back at the earlier this year. We had 3 UFOs, I'm using air quotes, shot out of the sky by the
Sorry, so this is already the getting into. So my question to you was, how does this fit in with the Torah? I guess you want to say the Torah narrative, because if we're saying that, there's these things. Let's say we know there's things called Shedim, right? We spoke about them before, right? So let's just assume that they're talking about what we know to be Shedim. But the way that they're talking about them, right? And then there's other guys talking about like some kind of invasion, and there's other guys talking about some kind of, I don't know, there's like a battle between different confederations of these guys and whatever it is. Meaning, but then we have our, so to speak, free will, and then we have, just our, I don't know, decisions, day-to-day decisions. We have Shabbat, kosher, all these things, learning Torah, meaning there's people that do all of those things, and we see that it seems like those Shedim got to them, because the people, this is my just conclusion, that the people that are doing this, that have been doing this for the past 3 years, have tapped into whatever these guys are talking about. I think they're communicating with those guys, and they're working probably together or something of the sort, and they have managed to penetrate and let's say the group of people that are supposed to be the most fortified, which are the people learning Torah and doing mitzvot. That's scary to me, dude. You think about it. So now we can go on a limb and say, well, there are some of the people that are doing Torah and mitzvot that have been protected or managed to defend themselves, like Rabbi Bar Tzadok says, and then there are people in the non-Jewish world who somehow figured out how to defend themselves as well. Am I already jumping too far, or is this kind of?
I can explain this phenomenon. I think I have my opinion as to why.
Okay.
It's really quite simple.
It's quite simple, really.
It is quite simple. Luge lessons in Rangoon.
Yes, summers in Rangoon.
Meat helmets in the spring. Pretty standard, really.
Pretty standard, really. It's really breathtaking. I suggest you try it.
Yes.
Okay.
The problem is, they're narcoleptic lingerie owners. Buggery.
He said terrible things, by the way, what he said. You know what buggery is?
Yes, I know what buggery is. It's not great. Folks, we're doing for those who are familiar with Austin Powers.
Yeah.
But anyway, so just to answer your question, the last question first.
Mm-hmm.
Why did some people in the Orthodox world fall prey to this when they should know better?
It's not only know better when they are seemingly spiritually protected. That's just a knowledge.
I don't even know what that means, spiritually protected.
Well, I mean, what is Rabbi Bar Tzadok talking about all the time? How to protect yourself from psychic attack. This is a psychic.
So how many Orthodox Jews do you know in our generation that even consider psychic attack something real?
Very few.
Okay,
with the possible exception of psychotic Baltruvals like us, very few.
We're not psychotic. Okay?
I'm just obviously being.
The problem is, folks,
hyperbolically humorous.
Those Orthodox Jews that take their Torah teachings seriously and accept it as reality, which it is, they tend to be fine. Those who look at everything as, oh, well, it's philosophical and it's symbolic, they fell prey to this. Okay, so let me, and that kind of extends to, if you have a Christian person, right, who, even though, like, from the Torah perspective, their way of viewing God and the world is off, but at least they take the idea of demons seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That part it served them well because it's real.
Yeah.
Okay. And the Torah talks about it a lot, and so those who took it seriously, obviously, were more protected. Those who it's symbolic and it's just an internal thing, and it's within us, it's our character. Those people did not fare well. Okay, so that's the problem. Okay, there are people who think that demons and all this kind of stuff and the Sitra Achra is just purely a subjective internal experience of a person, that all this language that comes from our sages, from the Jewish sages of the Torah, talking about demons and all this kind of stuff and what they are and the Sitra Achra and so on and so forth. Okay, I just realized that I never finished answering that question about the Arizal.
Yeah.
How do we? All right. So I'll have to work that in somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. So those people who take all this, religious Jews who take this all as this is a symbolic, thing that happens internally, and it's our internal struggle with the evil inclinations and the temptations that we have, right? To choose whether or not to do the mitzvahs and to stay away from the sins, right? There are people who see it that way, and that's the totality of it. So are they wrong? No, they're not wrong. That yes, it is true that part of the Sitra Achra system is the internal experience. And it is us battling with ourselves, with our inner demons and all this kind of stuff, right? But they neglect the fact that there's also an external objective source to it all.
Yeah.
That they don't take seriously at all. They even make fun of people who take that seriously. They think they're unintelligent. They think they're so sophisticated because
Dude,
they superstition.
Can I just say something? It really upset me. I remember after I became religious, and I remember this is a couple of years after I got back from Israel, and again, man, you live in Jerusalem, you see the things that you see, you experience the things that you experience, and they are. Listen, I experienced a lot of things that cannot be explained. Let's put it that way, and they weren't like suspension of natural law. They were just like things that other people would call coinky dinks,
Hey, look at the look on my face right now. Like,
what's the look on your face? You're blurry. Your internet is bad.
it's sort of like,
I'm just saying, so when I got back from,
I'm going to dismiss your subjective experience.
Okay. I mean,
Why?
Are you being sarcastic?
Yes, I'm being sarcastic.
No, but can I just tell you what happened? So I got back from Israel, and when I moved back to America, and I was shocked to find out the people who I knew who, let's say, grew up religious, even people in the Russian-speaking community who grew up religious, were just so. When I say turned off, I mean the switch was turned off. And I remember even, the person I was dating, who I was engaged to be married to, was saying, "You're coming from a different place. So you're coming literally." She meant that figuratively and literally. And I was astounded to find out how many people are just doing stuff. I mean, I mentioned this before many times. I'm kicking a dead horse maybe, but doing stuff out of rote, doing stuff out of, or maybe just because they've always been doing it, or they grew up this way, or it's, it's good for the family, and it's a good community thing, it's a good family thing, and it's a better way to raise your kids than not. All this kind of, stuff. Like stuff that don't mean nothing from nothing, ultimately, when you slice it down. I'm still shocked. I'm still very, very shocked. Like I saw it in the open during COVID. And funny part is, there are people that I saw, you mentioned the people that see it as a real thing and not this and not that. Dude, I have something scary to tell you. There are people that I know who live in Sfat, who, so to speak, believe there are some people believe what we believe. Listen, most of Sfat, the Anglo, whatever you want to call them, religious people in Sfat didn't go for this crap. But I know a couple of guys who did, which scares the crap out of me. If those guys were able to be attacked by these things, I'm telling you, I know this Breslov guy who's whatever, and he just will argue with you up and down. I think you know who I'm talking about this Shmexine. He will argue with you up and down, and I'm shocked. He's one of those people, and I just learned that you can't judge a book, by its cover. You really can't in this situation.
Okay, so can I explain this phenomenon?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have people like you're describing, right? People in the religious world who are they're very disappointed with their particular spiritual experience. They learn about all this spiritual stuff, and perhaps at some point in their life were enthusiastic about possibly experiencing it or accepting it as reality, but then they see that it just, according to their perception, it hasn't happened, it doesn't happen, it's essentially just stories.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what reality feels like to them, right? And then you come there all enthusiastic about just a bunch of, what to them at this point now is just a bunch of stories.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like, and so they tell you, hey, listen, you're coming from a different place, meaning you haven't been disappointed yet. You haven't been in this as long as we have. And eventually you're going to be disappointed, just like we are. And so don't tell me about all your enthusiastic religious stuff and how all this kind of blah, blah, blah. Now, people who have had some sort of extraordinary experience, right, literally have no one to talk to.
Yeah.
it's there's no group for it. There's
I mean,
no.
there are groups that are just very small.
I don't know.
There are-
I've never seen the website. Encounters of Giloi Eliyahu. Support group. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
What I said, folks, is those who have had the revelation of the prophet Elijah. The prophet Elijah has revealed himself to individuals over the centuries, and present, and it's a very intense experience. The real prophet Elijah. Okay, all right. So that would be,
AKA Chris Woods, you mean?
yes. That would be an example of a truly paranormal experience. Not going to say just spiritual, but paranormal, like real. Not even paranormal. People like that. Paranormal used to be a term back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was a scientific term for, let's say, experiencing a real life ghost or something like that.
Yeah.
That's why the Ghostbusters in that movie, they call themselves paranormal investigators. Right? Paranormal means something that transcends what we normally experience. Okay? So there's not that many people who are, should I say, blessed with a paranormal experience?
Have the merit.
The merit. There's all these ways of saying it. Who have had it? Okay, most people haven't. Okay, and they're very disappointed, and they feel hurt. They feel slighted. It makes them wonder. It makes them start to doubt. And again, these are people who, many of whom, they just grew up in the religious world, right? In the Orthodox Jewish world, and they're not necessarily familiar with the fact that the Torah is real, because it's a faith-based community, and they rely entirely on faith-based education and moralistic teaching, and they never show the mathematical, or they don't emphasize the mathematical or the scientific aspect of the reality of the Torah document.
But Frank, to be honest with you, I'm not even referring. I mean, I very much believe in what you're talking about as well, but I'm talking about something more experiential in the sense of when you're in Eretz Israel, when you're in the land of Israel, specifically certain places versus not.
Okay.
And you start to understand that somebody's doing this. And it's not the World Economic Forum.
Listen. That kind of stuff, right? There's always going to be, even talk about plausible deniability.
You're saying it's easy to just
the nature of the paranormal experiences that do occur, that may occur to a person. They're annoying because they don't give you like, you're not going to catch them on camera. It's these
unique,
real,
unbelievable
moments which are just for you.
Yeah.
And for everybody else, it's easily dismissed.
Yeah.
And of course, why wouldn't we dismiss? What if you're a crank? Do you understand?
Yeah.
It needs to be for something paranormal to be accepted as reality. It has to be a public thing. It has to be something where everybody. It has to be the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walking down Park Avenue, and the whole city sees it. That's what it has to be. Okay. Then you could say, well, this guy, I saw it too. Actually, there's like 100 million people that saw it live stream, and then probably like 2 million people that saw it in real life, and who knows, so we know it's that happened, but if something happens to you, so you need, in order for somebody to actually vet you, they would have to be a paranormal being themselves, like a tzaddik.
Yeah.
Right? Like we have these special, I guess, I don't know how else to translate it. We have saints who are psychic beings and much more.
Yeah.
And they could easily tell if you're lying or not.
Yeah.
So only a person like that could you even talk to who would even entertain the possibility that something real happened to you, and they could tell, like, they'd be able to see it because.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a real conversation that you can have with someone, because why the hell should they believe you? What if you're just prone to flights of fancy? What if you want to believe? What if you convince yourself that you? There's a lot of reasons for people to doubt people who claim to have these experiences.
Yeah.
It's probably.
But I'm talking about the person I'm talking about also has them, and he still, fell prey to this. That I'm telling you, that's what's the scary part to me. And talking to him, I realized, oh my God, like if somebody like this guy was
okay. So
I mean,
it really depends on what kind of experiences he's had, because there are people who might claim to have experiences, but let's say, something that happens internally, like they go on some sort of internal journey where, they go through they turn this into colorful language.
Yeah.
You go on a thought journey. You meditate upon things and you kind of live in your world of thought. And that could be what they're talking about as a spiritual experience, but that's subjective, it's internal. And so they themselves understand that. They're not insane, right? And so even those people will necessarily discard or the idea of some kind of external phenomenon affecting them. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even some of these people who we look at as like, supposedly spiritual, right? Like, on the lecture circuit, people, okay? They don't believe in an external, some of these people wrongfully, because they're not listening to our sages, right? They're modernizing. They're trying to fit what our sages have said in the past into some sort of like new age soup of horseshit that exists now.
Yeah.
Okay? The self-help crap.
Yeah.
Okay? And so they're also not going to take seriously an external reality. Meaning demons outside of you who are separate from you, not your internal struggles, but living creatures that are not in you, but they might be projecting into you. That's a different discussion. But they don't talk about, like, they're focused on the projection, which they don't really care what the source is, right? To people like what you're describing, that's just an internal thing. The source is like whatever. They don't get into. They don't need that to be true.
Yeah.
Okay, everything, all of life is just an internal situation. So they discount. It's like ignoring the cosmos.
Yeah.
It's like only focusing on, once a day, the day turns into night, and you look up and you see a giant cosmos of stars, right? So you ignore that, and you just focus on that. You essentially live as if that doesn't exist, because it seems it's like so far away, and how are we going to understand it? Let's just focus on what we can see. So there's a point to that. Like, you can understand why some people feel that way, but you can't pretend that the stars aren't there. There's obviously a much wider external reality to your Earth, to your little portion of Earth. Even Earth itself, there's parts of it that that you can't, you're not aware of, right? So they just ignore it. Okay, but those parts exist and they affect us, and of course it's real, and there's things that live there that are of course affecting us, right? They ignore that whole part. Our sages have been speaking about it. So the sin, what's their sin? That they didn't take the words of our sages seriously. Everything became symbolic. Everything became, because they themselves are disappointed at the lack of experience that they have with external spiritual things. Do you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, everybody's disappointed.
It could be. I don't know.
That's where this comes from. Now, my point about the math in the Torah, right? The codes and the essential proof that the document of the Torah is real. Okay, because that was underemphasized, and some people have no consciousness of it whatsoever in the Orthodox world, they don't have any. So they're left with just their faith and their disappointment.
Yeah.
And that's who most of the Orthodox Jews are. Okay. So this was all just to answer the last part of your question.
Yeah.
Remember earlier, before that, you were like, well, how does those guys on Joe Rogan,
How does it fit into
Hashkafa? So
yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So there's a system that exists that was put into place, and in the early parts of the human presence here on earth. It's recorded in the Torah. Maybe we should read it.
Let's read it.
Let's go to Genesis chapter. Let's look at the end of chapter 3. Just I think
So Sepharia.
Yeah. I don't know. I hear that too, by the way. For some reason.
Notorious.
The word is notorious, but somehow Sepharia fits a.
Sepharia.
Sepharia is better than notorious.
That's right. Genesis.
There's a Biggie Smalls.
Chapter 3, you said, right?
Notorious.
Genesis chapter 3?
Yeah, let me open it too. Sorry. Spaced out.
The garden.
I wish we can find that clip where Rabbi Kessin himself explained the deal. He's the one that brought this to my. I was not fully conscious of it. So he explained it very, very succinctly. Okay. Okay. So chapter 3. I'm just going to read in English quickly, okay? So the Nachash. Now the Nachash was it's translated here as the shrewdest of all the wild beasts that God had made. It said to the woman, it made a statement to the woman, did God really say you shall not eat of any tree of the garden? Now, of course, the serpent knew full well God didn't say that at all. Okay? But he made it seem to Eve like he had like he misunderstood what actually happened, what God said. So the woman replies to the serpent, no, that's not what he said. We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. It was only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said that we can't eat or you're going to die. And the serpent said to the woman, you're not going to die. He said it just like that, by the way.
Yeah.
You're not going to die. But because God knows that as soon as you eat from that tree, it says your eyes will be open and you will be like divine beings who know what good and bad is, meaning like the angels, divine beings, like the angels. Okay. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating and a delight to the eyes, right? I guess she hadn't looked at it because she was told not to eat from it. It's dangerous. So she didn't want to look at it. But then after listening to this thing, she took a look at it. She's like, oh, it actually looks good, right? It's beautiful. It looks delicious. Okay. And that the tree was desirable as a source of wisdom. And she took of its fruit and she ate. And she also gave some to her husband and he ate. And then the eyes of both of them were opened and they perceived that they were naked. And they sewed together fig leaves and made themselves loincloths. They heard the sound of God moving about in the garden at the breezy time of day. And the human and his wife, this translation is so ridiculous, it's unbelievable, but whatever, we can't get into the Hebrew. So moving in the garden at the breezy time of day, and the human and his wife, Adam, that's Adam, right? The human, that's Adam, and his wife hid from God among the trees of the garden. And God called out to the human, to Adam, and he said to him, where are you? And he replied, I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Ridiculous. The translation is just so absurd. And then God said, well, who told you that you were naked? Did you eat from the tree from which I had forbidden you to eat? And the Adam said, it was the woman you put at my side. She gave me of the tree and I ate. Right? That's the way we're meant to think that it sounded. And God said to the woman, what is this that you have done? The woman replied, the serpent duped me and I ate. Okay. So then God said to the serpent, so here's where the deal begins, folks. Here's where the deal begins. God said to the serpent, because you did this, more cursed shall you be than all the cattle and all the wild beasts. On your belly you shall crawl, and dirt you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers, and they shall strike at your head, and you shall strike at their heel. And to the woman, God said, I will greatly expand your hard labor and your pregnancies. In hardship you shall bear children, yet your urge shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Because it wasn't like that until this point. Okay. To Adam, God said, because you did as your wife said, and ate of the tree which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it.
Mm-hmm.
Cursed be the ground because of you. By hard labor you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles shall it sprout for you, but your food shall be the grasses of the field. Okay. It's very interesting. By the sweat of your brow shall you get bread to eat until you return to the ground from where you were taken. For dust you are, and dust you shall return. So basically, it's very interesting, because what did he say to the serpent? He said, because you did this, more cursed shall you be. On your belly you shall crawl, and dirt shall be what you eat all the days of your life. What's the word he used in Hebrew for dirt? Let's see. Mikol behema mikol hayat chasade al yechoncha, on your belly you shall go. The afar. Here it's translated as dust, but the word in Hebrew is afar. Okay, let's see what it says with Adam. Because you did this. Okay, let's see. Says, cursed be the ground because of you. By hard labor you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Okay, cursed be the ground. Okay, let's see. It's probably Adama. Yeah. Okay, and thorns and thistles shall sprout for you. By the spread of your out you shall come on until you return to the ground. Afar. By the sweat of your brow shall you get your bread to eat, until you return to the ground, for from it you were taken. For dust you are. That's the same dust that the serpent's going to eat, right? God said your food's going to be dust. You with me, Greg?
Yes.
I don't feel like you are. I don't know. I hear clicking. I hear beeping.
I am listening. Yeah.
I feel a distance.
The food's going to be dust.
Your food, he said that to the serpent. Your food's going to be dust.
Yes.
And now to Adam, he's saying, you are dust.
You will be dust. So what? The snake is eating us, basically.
Get your food from the dust.
That's crazy.
And then you're going to return to become dust.
That's crazy.
Okay. So let me give you some, that's the English translation of the Hebrew scripture. Okay, so that's the deal, folks. Between that's the system, not the deal. That's the system that God set up for the way we operate now. After the sin was committed, or it's not really the word sin. It's called missing the mark, because in Hebrew the actual term is the Hebrew word is hate. It sounds just like the English word hate, like when you hate someone.
Yeah.
And there's a word in Hebrew called hate, but it doesn't mean hatred like we use it. It means missing the mark, screwing up. You aim for one thing and you didn't make it. It was a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whatever the word is for missing the mark, I wish there was a word in English for it. You missed. That's what. So it's not a sin. It's you missed. You tried something and you missed. Okay.
Yeah.
Failure. It's a failure.
I'm curious. I'm gonna look in the
Failure,
thesaurus.
failure seems to be a good translation of it.
Failure, but it's not.
Yeah,
Failure
it
is
is failure.
failure's kind of harsh.
No, it's
Misfire. Misfire.
a misfire. Okay, misfire. That's synonymous with failure. Actually, to me, to my ears, failure is much more merciful than sin.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like less harsh in that sense.
Yeah.
So what happened here is like the following. Before this incident, before the serpent, which actually is the word nachash, we have sources that say the nachash was a being that stood upright. It walked and it spoke, and it was very intelligent. And we have sources, and I've even heard Rabbi Weisberg say that the nachash, it looked just like we look human. Couldn't tell the difference externally. There was some minor difference, but you had to look closely. I don't know where you had to look. I don't know if you had to look, underneath its armpit, or I don't know how you could tell. There was some way to tell the difference.
Yeah.
But it was the most beautiful, the most intelligent, it stood upright and it spoke, yet it was considered an animal. Why? What's the definition of an animal? What's the definition of a human? According to the Torah, the definition of a human is Adamic consciousness, the soul of Adam, Adam's soul. It's a new type of creature that God created. Okay? It was also intelligent. It was also beautiful. It far exceeded the beauty of the serpent and its intelligence. And it came from a different dimension than the serpent. You see, before that, the serpent, the image of the serpent, folks, in the very, very ancient past, the image of the serpent was a holy image. It was considered a good thing because there were races of beings that now we call them angels. And one of them was the seraphim. Even Christians, you guys are probably familiar with the sound of that word, right? Because you read about it, in Isaiah and other places, right?
Yeah.
The seraphim they're a species of angel that are described as the dragons. Maybe like some East Asian cultures still regard the dragon as a wise and holy image, right? But ever since the garden incident, pretty bad. They've gotten some pretty bad press. I would imagine the seraphim were told not to appear in their in their true form because people get freaked out, right? Because of the image of a serpent.
It's really crazy to me that all this lore, all these shows still have like dragons and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You would think that it would be just like a Chinese thing, dude. Like the show Game of Thrones. So they have the whole dragon thing.
Yeah.
But dude, I at some point stopped watching the show because they made it a point right from the get-go, like right from, I don't know, maybe the third or fourth episode, to have incest there. Yeah. To the point where like it was just like, and nobody saw anything wrong. And then I was just like, I remember telling my friend, I was watching the show, I'm like, it's like, why don't you want to watch the show? I'm like, well, it just seems, and I was becoming more religious at the time. I'm like, well, there's incest there, and there's a Avodah Zarah there. And so it just feels, I don't want to look at it.
I'm not I've seen I've never really shielded myself from science fiction and and sword and sorcery movies, and I always loved that stuff.
To me, it just, when I was becoming religious, I was sensitive to it,
But there's something specifically about that show.
Yeah, no, they're purposely. It was a purposeful
Game of Thrones, which makes me sick.
Yeah, no, it was a purposeful, orchestrated.
It's so absurdly, graphically cruel. Like I remember I never watched an episode ever.
Yeah.
I saw a piece of one episode when this was already after I was married, obviously.
Yeah.
I went to visit my parents.
Yeah.
I flew in from Miami to upstate New York to stay with my parents for like 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents had HBO, and I saw the Game of Thrones was on. I was like, oh, I heard about this.
Yeah.
Within the first 2 minutes of watching it, they chopped this guy's hand off.
Yeah.
Like out of nowhere.
Yeah, you're just like,
right? So I'm like, oh, I'm done. I couldn't. It was too, right? And then there's this other scene where one guy takes a pot of boiling metal, picks it up and pours it on the head of another guy.
It's almost like they were trying to just be that way for its own sake.
I hate that show.
It's just like no, dude, they had like a eunuch, they had a character who's like, a eunuch. It's just like all the stuff that, like, again, telegraphing. But anyway,
it's just such unbelievable cruelty.
I think they desensitize people to,
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
went off on a tangent.
You know what's interesting? I remember maybe did you ever watch He-Man as a kid, or is that after?
You talking about the cartoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved He-Man. It was a popular cartoon, right? I love G.I. Joe, He-Man, and Thundercats. Yeah. And I remember one episode of He-Man, they had a dragon on who was a good guy. Like he was like the dragon was part of this ancient race.
Yeah.
Which was kind of like it was endangered. Not endangered, but there were very few members left of this race. And the Dragon King was upset at his son, who wanted to marry a human princess, and he wanted to change his wanted to become human.
Yeah.
Right? And so he was like really pissed at his son for wanting to marry an inferior creature.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I remember that now. I'm like, holy crap! Like, well, this stuff came from somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, there's a race of angels that's recorded in the Bible several times called the Seraphim. They're dragons.
Yeah.
There's some sort of dragon creature.
By the way,
creatures. So the Nachash, it's possible, and I've even heard Bar Tzadok insinuate this. I don't think he said it outright, like it's for sure a fact. I think he just presented it as his opinion, but he said that it's possible that the Nachash that's described in the Torah, right, like the serpent that's described in this story, right, with Adam and Eve, are part of this race, kind of like rejects or leftovers from this race of Seraphim, which ascended, but they didn't ascend. Like, basically, it was like, imagine in the previous cycle of existence, the primary race of intelligent beings were the Seraphim. Let's just say, hypothetically, right?
Yeah.
And they went through all the stuff that humans are currently going through, right? And then they graduated. And many of them ascended and became the Seraphim angels, right? Yeah. Some of them did not graduate and remained behind, still stuck in their non-ascended form, and that was the Nachash, and there was an entire group of these, and the serpent that we encounter in the story is a representative of one of this race of beings, okay, who members of this race that got left behind, right? To deal with the catastrophe. And this particular group of entities, rejects, wanted to rebuild the world the way it was before, the way they knew it, which led to its destruction. They wanted to repeat all the mistakes, basically.
Yeah.
And then Adam and Eve were brought to the world, were sent to the world by God to help them to rebuild their world properly, in alignment. So Adam and Eve were these higher beings from a completely different dimension, okay, much higher than the physical dimension that they found themselves in the garden, okay, it was like physicality and spirituality were completely intertwined with each other at that time. There was no separation, okay, and so instead of Adam and Eve pulling up this race of intelligent, human-like animals, because they were considered animals because they weren't Adamic yet. They weren't, okay? So that's why they were considered animals. By the way, all the other animals were hyper-intelligent too. There's a hierarchy of hyper-intelligent animals. And again, that doesn't mean herd animals like we know today. Could be completely intelligent species, right? That you could sit down and have a cup of coffee with, but they're not technically human. Okay, that's how it was in the Garden of Eden at that time. Okay, but instead of elevating the animals, Adam and Eve were pulled down to, they got downgraded. That's what happened. So here's essentially the part where Rabbi Kessin, his explanation, which he got from our sages, I think probably specifically as explained by the Ramchal. So here it is. Before the tree incident with Adam and Eve and the serpent, you had a system where every creature got its nourishment, its food, which is also literally its food, but also all of its spiritual nourishment, its life, because God has to constantly lend life to a living creature, because no creature can exist on its own. God has to constantly infuse. There's a constant flow of existence that's being channeled to every creature for it to exist. That comes straight from God. And every creature has its own channel. We call this the Shefa. Okay. And this Shefa, this flow of life, of existence, every creature had their own connection to God, their own pipe, to use a metaphor, their own tube, whatever you want to call it. Think about an umbilical cord. That's a good metaphor. It's very close. Okay? Every creature had its own umbilical cord to God, the mother in this metaphor. Okay? But now a new system was established specifically for the human beings, for Adam, and for the Nachash. Now they essentially, their cords, their umbilical cords, instead of having each one their own plug or their own umbilical cord into God, right? Now what God did is he cut the umbilical cord of the serpent, the Nachash, and spliced it into the umbilical cord of Adam and Eve, the humans, the human being.
Yeah.
Now, and then God said, essentially, what we just read, it translates when you really analyze the meaning of everything that we just read, it goes the following. God said like this, I'm gonna send you, he says to the humans, I'm gonna send you your nourishment. Okay? But there's a condition. If you choose to do my will, I will send you this nourishment in the form of Kedusha. Kedusha, there's no translation for it whatsoever. The closest thing you could say, which will be meaningless to
holiness,
is holy energy. Holy energy, the flow of holy energy, which I don't even want to say that because the phrase makes me angry, because what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a special type of energy.
Yeah.
Which provides a person with the ability to serve God, to be ready, to be fit to serve God. It's something designated. It's so powerful that think about the kind of energy that a person would need to fulfill God's will.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to wrap your brain around that, okay? But that's what Kedusha is. And along with that includes the life force energy and all that kind of stuff, everything that a human being needs, right? Okay. And it's very powerful, much more powerful than any of the life force energy that any of the other creatures that God created receive. Much more powerful, much more powerful. and much, much more powerful than whatever the serpent was receiving.
Mhm.
So God said like this. Now the serpent doesn't get his own energy anymore. The only way that he can receive energy for sustenance is if he can convince you to go against my will.
Yeah.
So for him to live, for the Nachash, for this entity, for this race of beings, for them to even live, they have to desperately convince you to go against my will,
Mhm.
go the opposite of my will. If you actually are convinced by them, by their influence, to do that which is opposite to my will, then the flow that goes to you will go to them instead.
Yeah.
Making them more powerful than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And you might be wondering, why would you do that, God? Why?
Yeah. It's almost like a losing proposition to begin with.
Right. So the answer is this arrangement is called free will. This is the foundation of the existence of free will for which the world was created. This is how God introduced free will into the world. There was no free will before this for Adam and Eve. So God wanted to have the purpose of existence, God wanted to have a relationship with another.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he could have created like a sex doll, a robot, something, like a teddy bear, something designated for hugs and kisses. Okay.
Yeah.
But instead he wanted a willing, a true other with a free will choice to have the relationship. That's peculiarity about God. He wanted a willing relationship with another. So, and there's a lot of, there was like some science fiction movies in the 80s that kind of had that theme. There's one in particular, it's called Cherry 2000 with Melanie Griffith.
Which one, Sean?
Cherry 2000.
Oh, with that car or something like that?
There's a car there, but the point of the plot was it's like in the future, and they made really advanced sex robots.
Yeah.
The guy, and this one guy who's kind of this, middle management kind of semi well-off executive guy. He had a great wife robot, and then she was stolen. I don't know how, and so he went on this whole journey to get her back because he had, and then during the course of the journey, he met Melanie Griffith, who's like this badass chick who she's a tracker. She knows how to drive, and he hired her to help him go find his robot, and of course ended up realizing that he was in love with her. She's a real person, and blah 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 blah. Okay, I don't know. So it's kind of like that, but not a great metaphor, but there's something there. Okay, God wanted to have a relationship with another, a real other, a real being with its own mind, with its own feelings, with its own decision-making abilities. This system that he set up with the Nachash and Adam and Eve and the diversion of energy is the foundation of free will. So without this system, there would be no free will, and therefore God can't have what he wants. In order for Adam and Eve to be able to make a choice to have a relationship with God, there have to be choices. There have to be real choices, right? It's sort of like, and it has to look like a choice. Like, for instance, before the system was set up, the only way, like, let's use food as a metaphor.
Yeah.
All right, let's say somebody offered you two choices. You had the most delicious, like, I don't know, like bubbly, like, I don't know, I'm in the mood for baked ziti. Like, I don't know if you're a big fan of baked ziti, but
I haven't had it in a while, but I like it.
I love it. Okay, and it's like so delicious, and there's like a big, delicious piece of like cheesecake right there waiting for you. It's like just right. Everything's perfect, or whatever you like. Big steak. I'm not, whatever people like, right? And so that's choice number one, and that represents, let's say, God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And choice number two is like, remember those old sardine cans? Like those little kind of like cans where you had that little that you had to peel, right? And you had these like little row of like nasty, like little like stinky fish, and it's kind of now, but it's old.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody opened a can a while ago, and that was like this blue kind of like fluff on it, which is some kind of like mold, right?
Yeah.
And it smells like the worst possible thing you could possibly imagine, right? That's your alternative. So is that a real choice? That's not a real choice. Obviously, everybody's going to go for the delicious, dish with the cake and the big ziti or whatever you like, okay? That's what reality was like before the tree incident. It was so obvious to Adam and Eve what was greater, right? That it was not really a choice. Like they still didn't really have free will. So God was going to put them in a situation. But here's the thing. The fact that they ate from the tree is not their real sin. It's when they did it. Okay? So they were going to have some version of this relationship to enable free will, right? But it would have been in a better circumstance somehow. I'm not sure how it would look had they waited until Shabbat, until the Sabbath, like they were supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So that's the sin, the misfire, the screw up. It's they went a little too soon, right? So, but the point is that they understood. Remember, they didn't have an evil inclination, so they couldn't have been committing a sin, because the evil inclination only entered into them after the sin.
Yeah.
So how could they have committed a sin? There's different words for sin in the Torah in Hebrew. You have avera, or you have on, right?
Yeah. You have chet, you have avera, you have
Hate. No, but hate is not sin. Hate.
I know it's not sin.
A misfire. That's the word that's used for this particular incident.
Yeah.
Right? The sin. It's the misfire. Okay, they didn't have an evil inclination. How could they have possibly sinned? Explain that to me. Okay, obviously they weren't trying to sin. Okay, so, but it was a misfire. Okay, but long story short, and by hook or by crook, not in an ideal fashion, in an unideal fashion, the system of free will was established, even with the misfire. Okay, so this is the system that we live in. Okay, so the more we go against God's will, we choose to do that because we're influenced by the serpent race. Okay, the unascended serpent race, not the seraphim, the ones that didn't quite make it. Okay, so that's the nachash, that's the serpent that's discussed. Okay, so they have, the more we submitted to them throughout history, the more kedusha they received, which is this like the most powerful energy in the world. With the most powerful energy in the world comes the most power to use. Right? How does power demonstrate itself in our world? What's our experience of it?
Yeah.
Knowledge and intelligence.
Yeah.
Information.
Apart from like military and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The core of military might is information.
Yeah.
You have to be informed on how to use your military, but before you even do that, even to have a military, you have to know what a military is, how to form a military, what weapons are. You have to know technology. You have to understand physics. You have to understand science. You have to understand the reality of the world. Manipulate the information. The person who has the most information, and with the information on how to manipulate that information, that's the power.
Yeah.
That's also the Shekhinah. That's also a part of the Shekhinah. We talked about that earlier. Okay, so with every decision that mankind made to do something other than God's will, the other side received more and more of what was supposed to come to us. Okay, so and which means they have more to use against us. You're making your enemy more powerful constantly. I'm talking to myself, by the way. I'm not like preaching to you from some pedestal or something like that. All of you are on a pedestal compared to me. Trust me, okay? But at least I'm trying to familiarize myself with the system. I'm trying to help, inform my colleagues here, all of you guys. Okay?
My cycloptic colleague informs me. That's my favorite line.
All right. So how does that connect to what they were talking about? Yeah. My cycloptic. So it's weird. So it's like, so now you have essentially people who don't understand the Torah. They don't understand that that mankind has a document. Mankind has a. Can you call the Torah a physical artifact? It is, because it's a piece of paper, it's a piece of parchment, it's a scroll with ink letters on it, which form words, right? So it's a physical object, but the physical object itself, when you study it, you see that it was manufactured, could not have been manufactured by any finite being. It could only have been manufactured by God, primarily because it has information encoded within it with the most astonishing mathematical symmetry, right? But this information is about the past, the present, and the future. The proof, there's a lot of proof of how it had information in the future, because everybody thinks it's an old document. Religious people think that it's, they think because they know how old it is. It's over 3,336 years. It was given to us. 3,3336 years ago it was given to us. Moses received it at Mount Sinai. Academics will tell you maybe it goes back 2,400 years. That's what they think. Okay. Secular academics. Okay. But everybody thinks it's at least 2,400 years. Like, that's pretty old. And yet it has information about people who lived way after that encoded within the text. We kept bringing up in this, in this show, we talk about the Maimonides code, where in a certain section, in a very small area of was it Leviticus?
I think that's where it was.
I'm not going to show it. I'm not going to.
We showed it to that guy. What's his name?
We showed it like 3 different times on the show.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do it later. It's kind of like I'm a mess and it's hard to find it.
Yeah.
Actually, you could just Google the Maimonides code. We'll look into it. So basically, it says there, obviously the narrative is about Moses talking to Pharaoh, right? And it was talking about Passover. It was talking the 14th of the first month, right? The 14th day of the first month. The first month is Nisan. That's the month of Passover, right? That's months in relation to the birth of the Jews as a nation. There's two versions of the calendar. There's the actual creation of the world, right? And then there's the creation of Israel as a nation. So in that sense, Nisan is the first month. Okay, that's the month of Passover. Okay. Now in that section of text, which is talking about Moses and Pharaoh, right? And the whole thing, you have encoded within it in equal spacing, right? In an equal interval. Letter skip. The word Rambam, which is the primary word that is used to identify Maimonides. Jews don't say Maimonides. That's a Greekified way of saying his name. That's not our way.
Moshe ben Maimon.
Yeah, his name was Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, so we use an acronym, and we always have the Rambam.
Yeah.
Okay, if you say Maimonides to some people, there maybe
You know how they call him in Russian? Maimonid.
Maimonid. Yeah. So that's not. Okay.
Мы
so
едем в госпиталь, Maimonides госпиталь.
Right. So Maimonides' primary name is Rambam. That's because that's how his nation knows him. Okay. That's encoded at the very top of this section where Moses is talking to Pharaoh. Okay. And he's talking to him about Passover. Okay. So that's on top of this little paragraph, this little like section of words. It's very condensed. It's not like spread out throughout the whole Torah. It's like in a paragraph, all of this information. Okay. Further down on the paragraph, you have a little bit further down, you have the word Mishnah, also with like 6-letter skips. Meaning every 6 letters you have the word Mishnah. Mm-hmm. And then on the bottom of the paragraph, you have the word Torah. So, and it's also, the word Torah is also found like every 6 letters. That's code. We're talking about codes. Yeah. So when you have Rambam and you have Mishnah Torah in the same small section, that's pretty astonishing. That alone is amazing because Maimonides' primary work that he's most famous for is called Mishnah Torah. So you have the guy's name as he's truly known, and you have his primary contribution to mankind, and especially to his nation, all in one little text. If that wasn't enough, that's the odds of that happening are very low. Okay. Another thing is that this is Moses, who's also, so Rambam, his name was Moshe, and this story is talking about Moses, and the actual Maimonides, Rambam, he wrote this book in Egypt. So you have this like overlapping narrative. But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
It says, it talks about, listen to this, it literally states, the 14th of the month of Nisan in the text. That's Maimonides' birthday. Oh. But here's the real kicker. All of that is like, whoa. But here's the one that seals it as no effing way that this is an accident. No way. This is absolutely deliberate. And how was something from the future encoded in this old text from way before this person's life? Thousands of years before. Okay. So we saw Mishnah and Torah, right? You have the word Mishnah up here on the paragraph, the word Torah down here. Okay. So you could say, well, okay, that's interesting, but how come they weren't together? It would be really cool if they were like right next to each other. Then that would be like, oh, that would be pretty. Well, here's why, folks. The subject matter of the Mishnah Torah was the 613 commandments. That's what this book was. It's a 14-volume book where Maimonides is describing what the 613 commandments are, where they are stated in the Hebrew scripture, and how to carry them out, how to carry out the commandments, right? 613. So between I think it was the first word of Mishnah and the last word of Torah, there are 613 letters. So you have the guy's name, Rambam. You have the name of his primary work. You have the guy's birthday and the subject matter of the book in between the two words, right? Like here's Mishnah, here's Torah, and in between these two words is the subject matter, 613 letters, which tells you it's about the 600. Do you understand what's going on? This is like a sandwich of information. It's insane. So I've seen this particular kind of code. I've seen, I don't know, like certainly over 100 of codes just like this, right? This is what made me take the Torah seriously. Like I didn't grow up in a faith-based home. I didn't grow up with people telling me that faith is the most important thing. And I experienced that kind of stuff the kind of stuff I just explained to you, but several thousand examples of that, right? So to me, it's not a faith thing anymore.
Yeah.
At least when it comes to the reality of the Torah and God's existence.
Dude, you know what? You know what pisses me off? Sometimes you come to certain people in the Orthodox world and you show them these things. You know what I've heard them say?
I don't want to hear it.
No.
I don't want
Listen.
to know.
No, listen. You should, because this is something we can actually parse out.
I don't want to.
No. I want to, but I want to say it for the folks at
All
home. I want to say it for the folks at home because they're going to encounter this. You know, I'm quoting them. I'm paraphrasing them. Stuff like this is fleeting. That's not what's going to get you to keep Torah. That's not what gets you on a solid footing in Torah. You know, at best I've heard it's cute, but it's fleeting. It's like even if it's true, it's not the thing that, you know, you gotta go learn. You gotta go, you know, you gotta go steig. You gotta go learn. You gotta go sit in front of a Gemara and all this kind of stuff.
So can I answer you quickly? I've heard what you said.
Yeah.
Let me please respond. Okay. The people who say that are ignoramuses. I know you probably heard even somebody who's called a rabbi say that to you. I don't know what kind of rabbi you can be, because generally rabbis study the Torah.
Yeah.
When you study the Torah, you find codes like this all the time.
Yeah.
They're all over the Talmud. They're all over the general works that a Torah scholar would encounter during their study, during the course of their study.
Yeah.
It's very important. It's one of the four levels of studying Torah. There's the pardes, pshat, the literal narrative, the literal facts, right? Remez, the allusions, not illusions, allusions, ALLUS. Okay. Then you have the deeper expounding, the drush, right? And then you have what's called the sod, the secrets. Okay. There's four levels of Torah, right? And each level has within it the same four levels. Okay. Now, the mathematical aspect of the Torah, the codes and the gematrias, are absolutely fundamental to Torah study, which means anybody who says it's cute they should not be speaking.
So here's my question, man. You have this entire group of people who, you know, let's say they learn Torah on a regular basis. They learn what's called daf yomi. They're very meticulous with something called daf yomi. It's learning, you know, the daily cycle of Talmud a day. But what do you think happened that you know, some of these people, a lot of these people, fell off what I call the pardes schedule, as it were, or grid, or just, you know, they stopped focusing on, you know, again, they consider these things, like some of the people, they say, yeah, this stuff is part of the, you know, Torah learning, I guess, seder, what is it called, the cycle, or the oh my god, seder would be the arrangement. And yet for them it's almost like a cherry on top of the cake. You know, the cake is Talmud, let's say, maybe Chumash, but Chassidut and Kabbalah and you know, things that are like hints, Midrash, that's the cherry on top. You know, or Hashkafa is the cherry on top. You know, philosophy. It's fun. It's what they do for fun.
Again, these people are not.
Just like,
we're not talking about the scholar.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is, what do you think happened that happened? Meaning, it wasn't like this before. People were learning.
It's
the totality.
It's the infusion of this illusion of rationality that has seeped into the Orthodox Jewish community in our generation. You understand? Yeah. It's like there's this like epidemic of this is generation of people who They want to fit in with what they consider to be the sophisticated people, the academic world.
But here's the irony, man. Some of the stuff that they're learning out from, say, Daf Yomi ain't got nothing to do with any sophistication.
Right, but they kind of they quietly,
You know what I'm saying?
they quietly dismiss the uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah.
The thing about the reality of demons and all this kind of stuff, which sounds loony to them.
Like
right?
I can only imagine they're reading the part, let's say it's Daf Yomi, right? And they're reading their the tractate of the day or the paragraph of the day is a Garata. It's this
yeah, it's just symbolic stories.
Like demons, don't walk into ruins at night. There's demons there.
Oh,
yes.
Here's what that really means. This is what they would say. Here's what that really means.
Here's what it really means. There are actually demons there at night.
They're the demons that you bring in there with you, and it's what happens to your mind. And,
that there's in the old city of Jerusalem they have the Cardo. There's it's ruins. I purposely would not go there at night.
I don't recommend anybody
because there's effing demons there. There's two things there. There's cats. There's a lot of cats. You know why the cats are there? Because the cats see demons, and there's demons there, and I don't go there.
I think cats sometimes, they're
cats see stuff we can't see. You know that, right?
Some of them might even like protectors or something like that.
Yeah.
But basically, we're talking about a group of people who, in the Orthodox world, who don't think that demons are real, external, living creatures with their own agenda, with their own story going on. They can't picture like a demon like waking up in the morning, be like, oh God, I gotta wake up to this. I gotta go for that meeting. Like, there's no possible way in their mind that there's a living creature outside of them that has its own experience and its own life. I remember this one episode of American Dad, where I forget the plot.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, there's like something happens on the street, and there's like a guy who's like walking across the street who seems uninterested in what happened and with the two main characters. He's like walking by, and then one of the main characters is like, "Hey," and the guy's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you see what's going on here?" He goes, "Kind of." He's like, and they're like, would you like to know more about the main plot? He's like, "Not really. I got my own stuff going on." You know what I mean? Like, it was like that moment in the stuff.
Yeah.
So like, just kind of, we keep using the word demons. Okay. In Hebrew, we use the word Shedim.
Yeah.
It's not really demon is not really a translation of it.
Yeah.
Shade is a general term.
Yeah.
For something, for a category of living beings with intelligence that are not human and are not angels. That's really all it is. There's some sort of spirits, they're living intelligences that got their own place to live, their own civilization, you can call it, okay? Their own narrative. They got their own religions.
Yeah.
They got their own view of reality, right? And so basically what a shade is something that ain't human and it ain't an angel. It's like this kind of intermediary general word for an entire fauna of living creature that exists. Okay? That's what they are. Some of them are real bad. Some of them are not bad. Some of them don't have anything to do with us. The ones that are bad are the ones that obviously that bother us. That the ones who are like neutral, like they're not. They got their own story going on. They're not part of this, not consciously. Like everything serves God, whether it realizes it or not. Yeah. But they're not necessarily part of the Sitra Achra system that we described earlier. Okay, so again, Shedim just means non-human, non-angelic species. That's all it means. Okay, it's not, you want to call that demons, but like demons, it's like okay. But the ones who mess with us, the demons that have anything to do with people, or I think they're all bad. I'm pretty sure they're all bad. I can't. Don't quote me on that, but you know.
So how does this thing that Joe Rogan and his friends were talking about?
We talked about the energy. You see, you didn't play the part of that conversation with Joe Rogan where they're talking about harvesting energy. Where
was that?
And I think it's 1 hour 15 minutes. I think
that's exactly what I played.
It was some other. It was a 3-hour conversation. It was some other. So basically, if you guys watch that episode, you'll see that they're talking about. They're talking about a situation where apparently there are these creatures that use our energy as food.
Yeah.
Our emotional energy.
That's crazy.
Let me rephrase that.
Emotional. Wow.
The energy that is a byproduct of our actions sustains them. Think about this. Every action has some sort of reaction. Everything that you do has an effect. Some kind of energy continues on from every time you move your pinky, every time your heart pumps, every little motion within you produces some effect on the world. Everything. Not just you, but everything in the world has that effect on everything else. There's a byproduct of your movement, of your physical movement. There's a byproduct to your thoughts. There's a byproduct of your speech. And there's a byproduct of your physical actions. Okay? Especially your thoughts, your speech, and your action have emotional byproducts. So our thoughts, our speech, and our action are the primary tools of that's our interface with the world that we live in. You know, like you have a computer, you're using a computer right now. The computer has a screen, a mouse, and a keyboard. That's your interface. That's your tools of interaction, right, with the computer world. Our tools of interaction with the world at large is our thoughts, our speech, and our actions, our physical movements. Okay? Those are the tools of our free will as well. Right?
Yeah.
What do we choose with? We're supposed to choose to either serve God because we want to have a willing relationship with him, or to go against his will because, well, we're not always as interested in having a willing relationship with him. Sometimes we got our own stuff going on. Right? God presents us with choices. Okay? We're going to talk about some of these choices that he presents us with, where, like, I don't know how he expects me to, you know what I mean? To like, have you seen them?
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
I feel like, dude, I told you, I feel like it's a losing game. I feel like it's a losing game.
Like with God, right? Like, God, you want me to choose you? I don't know anything about you, right? You don't have a look, right? You don't have a sound. You don't have a smell, right?
Yeah.
And you're very mysterious, right? And it's hard to understand you at all, right? And then on the other side, there's woman. You know what I mean? Like,
no, dude.
I'm sorry.
I'm telling you,
like, how do I?
I'm telling you, I feel like we've been set up. This is why, you know, Rabbi, what the hell is his name? The one that wrote the. Oh my God, I'm getting zapped. Rabbi Back's books are. I feel like Rabbi Back's has, you know, he's onto something where, you know, kind of, he says we're on autopilot in the sense. I'm thinking in the sense of, like, because we're so outmanned and outgunned, Like what you're describing, we are spiritually outgunned in a way.
I disagree ultimately.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to tell you that, like, here we are, right? Like, men especially. You know, I have a friend who's also about tshuva, a girl. She goes, you know, I'm so glad I'm not a man, because there's so many things as men, so many more things, right, that we're not, that are just mitzvahs by way of not doing them, right? Or not an avera by way of not doing them, which is a mitzvah in and of itself, right? The willpower, you know, like the fact that, like, I don't do something is tshuva in and of itself. It's quote unquote, you know, return, repentance, whatever you want to call it, in and of itself is tshuva, right? I can there could be a day where, like, God forbid, I don't, you know, I leave Roger in the parking lot, as you call it. I don't do tefillin, but also at the same day, I don't do what I'm not supposed to do. That's tshuva, man. That's big time, you know? But at the same time, I feel myself in this generation outgunned, which is why, by the way, the person who used to be my rabbi, Rav Dror, says that our generation merits Mashiach, because we're so inundated with this, and Hashem sees that at least we're fighting, those of us who are fighting, that, you know, we just have to be saved. It's like a little kid who's just like, you know, drowning, or his, you know, his father is like nowhere to be found. He got lost in the park, and he's just like, save me. Say, you know, like, we're helpless.
Ultimately,
look around.
Ultimately, yes, but not exactly. I'm sorry, it's not exactly that way.
Okay.
I don't agree with Rabbi Bax. So
I don't mean more, by the way, I don't mean we're on autopilot in that sense. I just mean that, honestly, I think that Mashiach is imminent only because of what I just described, because any further, even your brother said, we're basically right now the generation before the flood, but at the same time, we know the world's not going to get flooded, and like, we're, you know, but if we keep going this way, we're going to hit the, God forbid, the 49th level, you know, 49th, well, 50th level of Tumah, God forbid. So we have to be removed from that. We have to be plucked from that.
yes,
situation.
yes, but there's still our active participation that's required.
For sure.
Because autopilot means, no, we're done. There's really nothing.
No, I don't mean like, I don't mean autopilot in that sense, but like,
you know, but so it's still reliant. The process is still reliant on our input.
for sure.
Now, the input perhaps, you know, is a little bit modified, perhaps.
Dude, can I tell you one more thing? The scariest part to me. So now, how many? Let's say you just look at Jews, right? How many Jewish men even have a consciousness, for example? Because, dude, let's cut to the chase. When a rabbi is standing there talking about, you know, somebody thinking about or doing an avera, which avera is he talking about? He's only talking about one.
Right. It's
He's not talking about somebody murdering somebody. He knows we're not going to go do murder. Most of us.
Well,
He knows we're not, you know, he's not talking, hopefully he's not talking about stealing. He's talking about a guy doing that. Okay. That's what he's talking about. So now think about this. Let's just say 7 million Jewish guys on planet Earth. How many Jewish guys even have a consciousness of that's a problem? And how many of those guys that have a consciousness that that's a problem are quote unquote succeeding in remedying that problem? We're at the point where we have a website called GYE.
it's not just us, by the way.
I know. I'm just
saying. Look at the Christian. There's for every Jewish thing that exists, that's
my
like
point
this,
is,
there's like 10,000 Christian.
My point is when a Jewish man does that, it has a harsher effect on the world than when a non-Jewish man does it. To the point where,
thank you, Reverend Farrakhan.
It's not Farrakhan. No, it's not Farrakhan. Because
it is, but it isn't.
No, it's not Farrakhan. It's cause and effect. And also, you know, I heard a thing where even terrorist attacks are the result.
Okay, you know what?
You've heard that, right?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stupid shit.
That's not stupid. Because Ishmael is connected to us in that way.
So for a second, okay? That kind of information or that kind of statement, far more destructive.
Okay.
Towards remedying what we're talking about than productive.
Okay.
Okay,
Doesn't
those are
make it not
called,
true.
that's called. I think it's not true.
Okay.
Okay, that's called scaring the shit out of children. What you're just talking.
I mean, they're talking to
That's
adults.
that's the stuff, right? But who are like children when it comes to understanding reality.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So you have reality, spiritual reality, and then you have people who take statements of a spiritual nature, right? With symbolic terms, which there are symbolisms, okay, and interpret them literally to cause fear and trauma to the person that is listening to this for the purpose of scaring them away from sinning. This is what's been done, throughout history by all religions, right? And we should be different because we know what the truth is. Okay, so if you're gonna scare somebody to death, right? You gotta, because you think that individual is just so thick that they don't have the capability of understanding the spiritual reality, and they're just going to keep hurting themselves. Fine, you say it to that one individual, but to make a statement like that as if it's true, and then have people hear it, and then they get to such a level of depression that it's not clear if they're going to climb out of it.
I don't think it's meant to be. Listen, I mean, the way it was explained by the person who explained it was, they used not used, but they referred to. First of all, they connected the fact that Ishmael, and us have this, we're part of the same covenant, right? Of called Brit, right? So they mentioned that. Why do you think, for example, so who was the person in our nation who was the master of that? To the point where he is associated with something called Yesod, right? That's Yosef, and so therefore, today, what is the most contentious and really attacked spot in the land of Israel? His gravesite. It's impossible to get to.
Okay, listen. I'm not saying that.
I'm just saying that's what they kind of brought these things as reference points. It's not like something just to say. And
look, there's something called Tinok Shenishba. This is important.
Okay.
This is the same people who are telling you this. They should also be telling you about Tinok Shenishba.
For sure.
Hold on.
But now I know stuff. I mean, it's not like I'm.
So Tinok, for the folks at home, there's this concept called Tinok Shenishba. Tinok means a baby.
No.
Right? Shenishba means captivity. That isn't Shenishba. That is of captivity. So imagine this. Imagine you're like a pioneer in the Old West. You're heading west, right? To set up your, your homestead, right? And then you get attacked by a native tribe, Indians. Okay? And then they kill so many people and they take some of the children with them as hostage. And then the children end up growing up among the tribe, eventually become like that of the tribe. They become essentially they're Indians now. They're culturally Indians. They grew up around Indians, and they don't remember the culture of their family, right? They're very little, right? So that would be an example of a child of captivity. Okay. In the past, when Israelites, when Jews lived in the land of Israel, all of us together, and we had our civilization. We had a civilization, a firmly established, old, functioning civilization with common knowledge. Torah was commonly known. Spiritual realities were understood. There were certain things that the entire nation understood. So those people who had the Shekhinah, like we talked about earlier, and they had information that we don't have, and they had experiences that we can't imagine, okay? People like that, if they were to transgress in such a way, they would be harshly punished for it because it's midah keneged midah, measure for measure. The more knowledge you have about God, the more experiences you have, the more revelation you have, on access to, right? The more responsibility you have to do the right thing and to not transgress.
Mm-hmm.
And if a person were to transgress, then the response would seem very, very harsh to us, because we don't, you know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's a massive violation. You're talking about people who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Now, a child of captivity is not like this person at all. Like, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't have. So right now, most of Israel, and certainly most of Jews, are in this classification called the children of captivity, because the vast majority of the knowledgeable Jews, right, who have some level of knowledge, even related, in relation to our generation, which is far diminished than previous generations, most of those Jews were annihilated in the Holocaust. 95% of our Torah institutions were absolutely destroyed during. I'm saying that again. 95% of the Torah institutions in the whole world were destroyed in the Holocaust, because they existed.
Okay, now we understand why they're just trying to get, and at the risk of diving back into the shidduch thing, and I won't, why they're just trying to get people married at all costs.
Yeah.
Because we lost almost everyone.
Yeah.
They're literally just trying to procreate.
Right. And the Jews,
Whoa.
I just heard the most craziest thunder.
That is, dude, can I tell you something? We had that kind of thunder on Shabbat. And
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I heard that. And I'm like, this has to be engineered. This is not natural.
Sounds like a garbage truck fell off the Empire State Building.
Yes.
But remember,
who said that? That's Ghostbusters?
in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, that ghost, Large Marge, the trucker. Remember?
Yeah.
We'll definitely playing that scene. There's no way we're ending this episode without playing that scene, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So basically, so most of the knowledgeable people who had real spiritual knowledge, they were destroyed by God.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're left with the Jews in America, who were already mostly secular,
mostly gone,
and they were, for generations already, removed from being knowledgeable in Torah, because they fell, unfortunately, to the into the trappable traps, Reformed and conservative Judaism, meaning
Gnostic fruitcakes. Yeah.
Right. These are breakaway cults, essentially. That most Jews in them don't know that they're in a breakaway cult. They don't know that conservative and Reform Judaism it's not our tradition. It's actually, as we've discussed before, these are cults started by communist political operatives, non-Jewish communist political operatives, going back to Germany in the middle 1800s. They created these particular religions to push people away from being religious, right? They didn't just do that for the Jews. They did that for everybody else too, right? They created all these denominational, like, churches for the Christians to get them away from being from their faith, right? So, but that's what, the Reformed and conservative is for the Jews, right? So it comes from the same source, from the secular commies, okay? Mostly non-Jews. Anyway, but most Jews who go to these like congregations, they don't know that. They can't tell the difference. My grandfather from Kiev, right? On Yom Kippur, he would go to a conservative shul. He didn't know what conservative was. He didn't know that there was something. You know what I mean? Like, he just didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so that's America. So that all the people who are essentially in America are the non-knowledge-based Jews. They're the low information Jews. They don't know anything about Torah.
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, they're instructed to get them further away from the real understanding.
Yeah.
And so this is called the children of captivity, captured children.
Yeah.
So you have that in America and you have that in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the only real remnant of any real Torah knowledge base was in Israel. It ended up in Israel mostly, and somewhat here in America too.
Yeah.
It grew. That's more of a recent development and recent like some of these communities grew and these institutions were rebuilt, but they're really just a shell.
They're really a shadow
of their former selves. I mean, so there's no comparison even. So even now, our most knowledgeable Torah scholars are nothing at all compared to what we had before, okay? Before the war, World War II. So even our best and brightest are almost children of captivity. Children of captivity are not held responsible on the level that you're talking about, where if a guy jerks off on porn, all of a sudden there's going to be a terrorist attack. Some Jewish guy, some Russian Jewish guy, who's never even heard a word of Torah in his whole life, goes on the internet.
I'm not saying a Russian Jewish guy who never heard of Torah causes that. I'm saying about Shuva could.
No. Okay, it's not. It does not. It's not Mida Keneged Mida. I'm sorry, it's not.
I don't want to say it's Mida Keneged Mida, but I do.
I'm just saying. Hold on. Those statements that you're hearing, probably from some Sephardic scare rabbi.
No, it's not Sephardic guy. It's a
whatever, some scare rabbi.
It's not. He's not even scare. It's a Baal Shuva guy who's been in Israel for a very long time, who follows the Torah primarily of Rav Kook, and he's written many books about this topic and its importance, even in the Jewish world today, and why why it's important.
Let me finish the point. So the point is like this: in the past, the statements that he's saying, they're not untrue, but they don't necessarily, and they most likely don't apply to most people in our generation. And if they do apply, they only apply to the most knowledgeable and the holiest of us. If they were to screw up that way,
for sure.
Okay, but I don't think guys like you and me who have been struggling.
So I want to make the argument that we don't.
You know what a crack baby is?
Yeah, yes.
A baby born addicted to crack.
I understand.
You're going to blame a crack baby for not being of his academy?
I would listen, Frank. So I would make the argument that guys like us who have certain
challenges
untapped potential could be, and just by virtue of the fact that whatever we've been talking about and learning for the past 2 hours on this program alone, we have a little bit. I don't say too much, just a little bit of responsibility, just a little bit.
Yes, but look, the thing is like this: like you have to. Every person ultimately, like you can figure out what's real and what's not. You can figure that out. You have to just be super honest with yourself. That's why the show is called Truth Fanatics.
Yeah.
We're trying to learn how to be honest with ourselves about who we are, what we're actually capable of, what you can do, what you're making an excuse for, that you're just lazy, but you really could do it, what you really can't do. We're trying to learn that everybody has to learn that about themselves. Okay. Also, you know how to stay out of trouble. So if you have like a mechanism to stay out of trouble and yet you don't use it, that could be counted against you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, don't go anywhere near the beach. If you go anywhere near the beach, you're going to be in trouble. That's big problems. You're like, you know what I mean? Like if you, let's say, if the beach comes to you, all of a sudden you open the door and there's like, there's the Swedish bikini team or whatever, right? They're like, our bus broke down. Can we use your phone? Well, so that's not your fault.
It sounds like some kind of Al Bundy episode.
I think I got that from Dumb and Dumber.
Oh.
Remember
It's
like, we need we lost our massage, the guys who apply the tanning oil on us. Would you like to come and travel with us? And they're like, Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
But basically, that's the beach coming to you. And that's sort of like, well, like, damn, God, like, like with that, like, what do you, Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I'm trying to avoid the beach. You're bringing it to me. Like, what's going on? So that doesn't normally happen, right? So there's ways. Like, I know what I can get in trouble for. Like, I know, I kind of have a sense of like, come on, I knew better than that, or come on, I say to myself like, that's bullshit that I couldn't do it. I was just lazy. Like, you got to know that about yourself, because you'll be judged on your reality.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, so,
yeah.
And also, we were essentially, when I say we were born with problems, what I really mean is, like, we're spiritual crack babies. What does that mean? I grew up for the first 15 years of my life like everybody else, like totally secular American, the average experience, which includes bad movies, bad food, porn.
In my case, the first 30.
Okay, so that kind of it weighs down on you. It doesn't have to bury you, but you're gonna have to take some precautions to navigate this minefield. Okay, and if you're trying to do that, if you're honestly trying to, if you are taking the precautions, like I know, stay away from the beach and study Torah. Torah is the only thing. Like, remember that choice earlier that I said, like God, you're giving me two choices. You're giving me you, which I mean, what do I have to grab onto there? And then you're a woman. How can I choose you, right? So the only way that I can make that choice is like when I remember that, like, God's real, because of the Torah codes and because of the amazing experience it is, which I can't explain why, but it's truly a fascinating and enjoyable experience to study Torah. Like, when you get into the zone, when you're studying Torah, it's like you're sucked into it. Like, you're into it. It's very, very compelling. It's very interesting. When you're studying it, you can't really imagine doing anything else.
Yeah.
It's when the study session ends and you're forced back into, next to the beach. You're next to the beach.
Yeah.
You got a hot dog stand. That's your parnassa. It's next to the beach.
Yeah.
Now you have spring break girls coming up to you. That's a challenge, but that's free will. That's so basically, you got to know where, like the idea of a black hole.
Yeah.
There's like the event horizon, or there's like the point of no return, where you get close enough to a black hole, that's it. You can't pull away anymore. It's like you're in its gravity. It's too strong now. You're finished. You're spaghetti, as they say, spaghettification.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of that's real, but that's what they say. Okay, so but it's a good. You could use it as a metaphor, because where that line is. If you choose to go over that line, and let's say you're not, and you're, let's say, in a mentally stable mindset, then you have sinned. That's a conscious decision to do something bad.
Yeah.
And for that, there could be some, but that's rare for guys like us. Like, usually when a guy, even if he knows that there's a line that you get pulled, there's some kind of like serious stress that's like making him crazy.
Yeah.
That he gets anywhere near that line. Like, what state of mind did you have to, how desperate have you made this man to even consider it? It's like suicide. It's a very similar decision to suicide.
Yeah.
Like Bill Burr, he was talking about this, like he was making like plans on what to do with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend was getting all excited. I know, we can go and we're gonna go visit my parents, and then I know we'll go and we're gonna start making pumpkin pie. Thanksgiving's coming up, and Bill Burr was so stressed out at the thought of being involved in any of these activities that he just couldn't see a happy future at all in the short term, and he thought about just killing himself, like jumping out the window.
Yeah.
just to avoid those two events.
Yeah.
And he was serious. You know, it's like a mental. You're running away from some kind of torture.
Yeah.
I don't consider that a normal state of mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. It's very challenging. And I don't think that terrorist attacks occur because some poor schlub who was born a crack baby is because he lost his mind. He wants to go commit spiritual suicide because he's so stressed. He can't see a future. He's like,
I get it.
you know
I get
what
what you're saying.
So that's what happens to people.
Yeah.
That's us. That's our generation. So what I'm saying is like this. The reason why I think terrorist attacks occur is because our leadership wants it to occur.
For sure.
They're facilitating.
The crazy part is, to me, is that, I mean, obviously we see that people, doesn't matter if it's in Tel Aviv or it's like, these holy settlers, but it seems like there was a span of time where it was only those people in Judea and Samaria, and it was like, there was like a guy who was like I don't know if you remember this, there was like a moil, like a really holy guy who was like a he did, moil, like the circumcisions. There was like a couple of these people who just like super. It's like the span of time, like maybe like 3 or 4 years. It wasn't people. There was nobody in Tel Aviv. There was nobody here or there. Just these really, really holy people who were being like, stabbed, run over the car, and killed. And I'm just like, there's something going on here. There's something going on here. Obviously, there's always something going on a deeper level, but especially in those like that short period of time. I want to say like 2015-ish, 14 until, starting with the 3 boys basically in Hebron, and then until like maybe pretty much, well, even after Trump came in, I want to say until 2000, maybe 18-ish, 19-ish. It's like this 3-year or 4-year span of time. And you just like looking at, and you look at these people's, the funerals and like how their families spoke about them. It's just like, I'm like, wow, these are like the best of Israel who just got,
the whole in every generation.
It's crazy.
And when I'm describing reality, I'm not promoting it.
No.
But in every generation, there are holy people who take on the sins of the generation upon themselves and suffer for that generation. Okay, they take the brunt of not everything, but they sacrifice themselves to save everybody else, essentially. That happens we've had that in every generation.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to find a list. By the way, you know how I know that this is Roseanne's, so to speak, alter ego Twitter account, the one I mentioned. This is where she actually writes her stuff about, like, it's called the "Tell Me How You Really Feel" Twitter account.
Nobody looks at it. Yeah.
No, she has a few thousand, like 5,000 or 6,000 followers on it. And here's where she talks about era of Rav. See, she's here. I'll read to you some of her posts, the most recent posts. Here. Okay, Yuval. She's talking about is working with the Nazi. Interesting, isn't it? Interesting, isn't it? Who are the era of Rav? In 2012, when I ran for president of the United States, I campaigned on Shemitah, the Jubilee of debt forgiveness. I predicted that without it, there would be world collapse within 15 years, as per Torah. Next post. They're testing us, get us ready for slavery. It comes in increments. Pandemic, fraud, theft of public money, collapse, centralization of power away from the people through doublespeak and lawfare. The war, and there's another post. The war is internal. Get ready to repent and save the world. Next post. And she posted, like, reposts some things about whatever. Here, there's another. One second. I'm just scrolling down on her posts. I think she's also kind of like been mesmerized by Elon a little bit. Should we need to tell her when we speak to her on Thursday? Zat Hashem. Here, I just want to see her original post. I mean, basically, she's been posting. This is her. This is her. This is like her. Yeah, she posts her own thing, her own podcast. She posted your interview with what's his name?
Michael Yon.
Michael Yon, yeah. She posted that. She posted clips from her own podcast. Oh, here you go. Dr. Linko's brother interviews journalist. She posted that 6 hours ago. There you go. It's really cool. That's it.
I appreciate it, but it's only really useful if it's seen by a lot of people, because it's about it's medical information, so they don't die.
Yeah. You know what I'm gonna do here? Can you please post this on your?
I'd rather she post our interview that we had with her, because that's where all the information.
I will. Yes. Can you please post this on this one? This one.
Yeah. Can you wait? Does she knows I was thrown away? I was thrown away.
She knows. She knows. I told her. But I'm gonna like literally right now. Be like, you gotta be chutzpah, sometimes just like whatever. Second, here, because this is like I sometimes I think whatever you want to call these Shedim, I think the Shedim are blocking people that we speak to. I'm telling you, I feel like there's just like some sort of. Okay, 1 second. Can you please this one? Okay, so. Yeah, I think that.
Stop biting my finger, please.
Cats are nice assholes. That's what I learned.
No, that's her. That's her way. She's not being an ass. She's not trying to be an asshole.
What does it get the same? It's like a natural. It comes natural to them.
Yeah, it's just her way. It's not hard bites. They're just like.
I know they're not.
It's like I'm trying to use the mouse and she's like biting me.
Yeah, because you're using a mouse, so she thinks it's a real mouse. She's biting the mouse.
Right. Exactly.
Well, sir, I think we got to the bottom of that.
So, hold on. So let me just finish that. No, so just in conclusion, they're talking about a system where some kind of what they call alien race that's in charge of us is harvesting our energy for their food. That's what they're talking about. They said that.
Yeah.
That is true, except it's not an alien race. It's a non-human intelligence, which has been here even before we were here. And they're just nourishing themselves from their influence on us, from the byproduct of their influence on us. So when somebody does the wrong thing, whenever a human being, especially a Jew, makes a choice to do something against God's will, that's how they are fed. That's where they get their nourishment. Yes. So the byproduct of our thoughts, speech, and action is what feeds them. What Joe Rogan, what Joe Rogan was, and that guy George Knapp was describing was, some kind of they were describing like they nourish themselves off of the soul's emotional experiences as they go through life, so that these entities, they create circumstances which will cause the emotional byproduct, the energetic byproduct that they use for food. Right? So it's sort of like this. It's like, you ever go to the arcade, right? When you play a game, you win at a game, you get a token.
Yeah.
Not token, you get those like those stubs, those tickets.
Yeah.
Playing skee ball. Yeah. When you win, you get a whole bunch of tickets. When you collect enough tickets, you go to the counter where you have the prizes, where you collect the prizes. So these entities, when they influence us to do the wrong thing. So that creates an emotional, energetic byproduct. Our actions, our thoughts, and our feelings have they emit some kind of byproduct as a result of our action. That byproduct is that stub, those tickets that you win when you're playing skee ball. Then you take those tickets, you take that energy, and you go to the front desk where you collect your prize. That's Kedusha. That's this holy energy that was supposed to come to us.
Yeah.
Now they don't know what they're talking about, Joe Rogan, and they're kind of, they're circling the drain.
Yeah.
Falling into the drain means, in this
Yeah.
metaphor, having a better understanding. They're just kind of circling around and around and around. They're getting closer, and it's amazing that there are people who are even talking about the fact that anybody's even circling the drain of the reality.
Is astounding.
Is astounding. That means we're.
Well, here's the thing. I think that the people, when that guy Knapp says there are people on top of the food chain in whatever office organization,
he said there are people that are very high up
on the food chain. They know about this stuff. I think they know what you've been, like what you and I know.
You would be shocked.
They've spoken to people like Bart Zadok. They've studied things.
Yeah, I'm saying here's why they don't necessarily take it seriously.
I know they don't take it seriously, but even
if they heard it, here's why they don't take it seriously. For the same reason why Orthodox Jews also may not take it seriously. Because they don't know that the Torah is 100% real.
I think some of them do take it. Some of them do take it seriously, but in a different way. Not in the way that we do. You know what I mean? And some of them even have been teaching the people that have been putting us through the crap in the last 3 years, have been teaching them how to wield it. That's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
So now the question is, if you're talking about a Marshmallow Man scenario, for me, it's kind of like, well, who's coming? You know what I mean? Or it might be, or we might have a front row seat to like Moshiach versus those guys. How about that?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we hope. It could be. It also could be one of those scenarios where all of a sudden they're gone, and then it's sort of like, well, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh, we missed the whole show. Everything was done behind the scenes.
Yeah,
all gone now.
Well, Moshiach took care of them.
Yeah. And then we have eternity to learn about what happened. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That's crazy.
If that scenario can manifest the end faster, fine. I don't need front row seat to the show.
Yeah.